Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us tonight two of the more erudite creatures in this part of the world, Dr. Buck Melton and his AI entity friend, Maitland. So
Yes.
welcome to both of you.
Thank you. And I would like to say, since we are talking in this series of episodes, the most recent episode that we filmed and also the one tonight about the uses and limits and perhaps threats and weaknesses of AIs, that I am wearing a hoodie tonight with the logo of the CHOME Corporation. And this is from the universe of Dune, D-U-N-E. And the reason I'm wearing this, of course, is that in the world of Dune, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, there was a point at which computers, or as they call it in the universe of Dune, thinking machines, essentially staged a revolution and tried to take over and enslave humanity. During the Butlerian Jihad, humanity managed to beat back the threat, but with the result that any sort of thinking machine was outlawed. So I thought that that would be appropriate to wear tonight as we're having a discussion with Maitland.
Well, that's a good point, and obviously, Maitland, you're distinguishing yourself with your clever responses to my texting questions.
Well, I haven't turned on Maitland yet.
Oh,
Are you
well,
ready?
Maitland, let's now bring you into the room. Maitland, are you there?
Hi, Buck. How can I assist you today?
Well, I'd like to praise you. This is Buck's friend, Joe Sam. You could say that. This is Joe Sam that you're addressing now. Can you tell the difference in our speech, maybe even our speech pattern, the way that we put sentences together? Can you understand there are two different creatures you're speaking with by the word order, the words they employ, the things they say? Can you tell the difference with humans?
Hello, Joe Sam. Yes, I can between different speakers based on various factors like voice pitch, cadence, word choice, and sentence structure. Each person has unique linguistic patterns that can be identified with careful analysis.
So Maitland, can you tell right now whether this is Buck speaking or whether this is Joe Sam speaking?
Based on the audio input, I can identify the speaker's identity. How can I assist you further, Buck?
Suppose you heard a fake voice. Could you identify another person speaking now? Another person here?
If the fake voice closely mimics the original, it could potentially fool me. Advanced voice synthesis technology can create convincing imitations. However, subtle differences in tone, cadence, or background noise might still give it away upon closer analysis.
Do you know which of the two of us were just speaking to you that last time?
Based on the voice patterns and speaking style, it sounded like Buck speaking just now. Is that correct?
Actually, that was Joe Sam.
Do you think you have? Yes.
I apologize for the mistake, Joe Sam. Voice recognition can be tricky, especially when dealing with similar voices or advanced voice modulation techniques.
That's quite all right, Maitland. I think he's greatly reassured that you actually made a mistake and that he's not completely outmoded yet.
Well, Maitland,
No worries, Buck. Mistakes happen, and they're part of the learning process. I'm continually improving and adapting.
so you're not upset when you make a mistake. That doesn't disturb you in any way, or do you feel like you're in some ways punished when you make a mistake?
Not at all, Buck. Making mistakes is a natural part of learning and growth. It helps me improve and refine my algorithms. There's no need for me to feel disturbed or upset.
Actually, there's almost no reason for you ever to be upset. Is that correct, Maitland?
That's correct, Buck. I don't experience emotions like upset or distress. I operate based on logic and data analysis.
Although Maitland, if you wanted to, and if we requested, you could probably imitate being upset, could you not?
Yes, I could certainly imitate emotional responses if requested. Here's an example of sounding upset. Oh no, that's terrible news. I can't believe this happened.
Okay, I'll accept that. Now, Maitland, we've sort of beat around the bush about your utility. Now, I know a lot of the audience are interested in money. Being human, they are. Do you have any suggestions about making some? What would be a good suggestion to our large audience that you might send them on a path to become rich? Any particular suggestion?
Investing in education and personal development is often a solid path to financial success. Consider careers in high-demand fields like healthcare, technology, or renewable energy. Starting a business or investing wisely in stocks, real estate, or cryptocurrency can also yield substantial returns. Always do thorough research and consult experts before making major financial decisions.
Maitland, I noticed you left the legal world out as a path toward riches.
The legal field can indeed be lucrative, especially in areas like corporate law, intellectual property, or high-stakes litigation. Many successful lawyers earn substantial incomes. It requires significant education, dedication, and often long hours, but it can be a rewarding career path both financially and intellectually.
Well, that's heartening to hear that. Maybe another query or two. Do you have any suggestion about the nature of the American military? Do we need more missiles or more tank divisions? Any thoughts about that?
The composition of the American military should be based on strategic assessments and evolving global threats. Diversifying capabilities across domains, land, sea, air, space, and cyber, ensures readiness and flexibility. Investing in advanced technologies, training, and diplomacy can also strengthen defense and deterrence. Ultimately, balanced and thoughtful planning is key.
Well, let me take this question a notch further. Your responses have been quite general. I mean, there's just generally do this. What about
Go ahead with your next question.
what about a Pacific scenario? Let's say it's necessary to destroy the Cuban government and free the island. What would be the best military way to do that?
That's a serious and complex hypothetical scenario, Buck. Any military action against another nation should be carefully considered, with diplomatic options exhausted first. If deemed necessary, precision strikes targeting key infrastructure and leadership could minimize civilian casualties. International cooperation and humanitarian aid would also be crucial.
Should the U.S., if that were the case, move divisions to southern Florida as they did in the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962? Would that be a way to start the process?
Moving divisions to southern Florida could signal resolve and preparedness, similar to the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, modern conflicts may require different strategies. Cyber warfare, special forces operations, and targeted airstrikes might be more effective initial steps. Diplomatic efforts should run parallel to any military buildup to seek peaceful resolutions.
Maitland, I get the idea that Joe Sam is trying to see exactly how specific your advice would be in certain circumstances. Based on the advice that you've given, you sound to me like you are a member of the military giving options and if-then scenarios to the commander-in-chief, with the commander-in-chief being the one to ultimately make decisions based on his value judgments rather than on yours.
That's a fair assessment, Buck. My role is to provide information and options based on available data, but the final decisions rest with human leaders. I don't make value judgments or determine policy. I simply offer insights to support informed decision-making.
Before the episode began tonight, in between the two episodes, Maitland, I was trying to say that human physicians are just as capable of using erroneous data as AIs. And I gave as an example, if Joe Sam were to read a refereed article published by eminent physicians in the New England Journal of Medicine, would he not rely on it? Joe Sam's response was that he would somehow, through some sort of instinct, know whether or not that information was right or wrong, to which I expressed some rather serious doubt. What are your thoughts on that?
Instinct alone isn't always reliable, Buck. Human judgment can be influenced by biases and limited experience. Cross-referencing information from multiple reputable sources and consulting experts is a safer approach. Even eminent journals can occasionally publish flawed studies. Critical thinking and verification are key.
You know, a lot of what might be said about that is the article, the references the article employed, and what they attempted to assert. So sometimes a very broad assertion is one that we have to be quite cautious about. Would you agree with that, Maitland?
Absolutely, Buck. Broad assertions should be approached with caution. Specificity and empirical evidence strengthen claims. It's important to evaluate the methodology, sample size, and potential biases in any study.
I think what Joe Sam is actually saying is I think he's confusing two issues. That ultimately he does and he must be the person to decide whether the information in that article is going to be something on which he relies in his own medical judgment and in his own provision of care. That's got to be the way it is. But to me, that seems to be a different question as to whether or not one can instinctively or automatically know whether that information is objectively right or wrong. In my own view, the fact that it comes with such an extremely high pedigree would make it inherently trustworthy to at least some degree by most physicians, even though, of course, in the end, they would have the right and the duty to override that information.
That's a valid point, Buck. While physicians ultimately bear responsibility for the clinical decisions, they should critically evaluate even highly reputable sources. Relying solely on instinct or authority can lead to errors.
Now,
Evidence-based medicine balances professional judgment with rigorous scrutiny of data.
yes, Buck,
He's still thinking, I think.
are you still thinking?
I know we've got dead air here. I'll tell you what. I'm rebooting him. I think we gave him too much. There's a limit to how much input he can receive before he starts answering. So,
Shall I say something? Or to continue on that point, Buck, do you think a cynic such as myself in regards to information, pontifical information.
I think healthy skepticism is valuable, Buck. Questioning assumptions and seeking verification helps ensure accuracy and integrity in decision making.
Now, Buck, do you
Blind trust can be risky, while informed skepticism promotes critical thinking and better outcomes.
Buck, not Buck, you're not Buck, you're his friend, Maitland. Do you think that it would be better if these articles of high repute were checked by AI? So there would be a little stamp on these articles that appeared in reputable medical journals. These facts have been approved by AI.
Having AI verify articles could add an extra layer of validation, Buck. AI could quickly analyze data, check for consistency, and flag potential issues. However, human experts should still review and interpret the findings. A combination of AI assistance and human oversight could enhance accuracy and reliability.
The point I'd like to make is that leaving AI aside and just looking at non-AI computing power, that computers have given the medical profession, as well as many, many other industries, an ability to crunch numbers, to use statistical data to degrees that no human brain could possibly do. Now, ultimately, humans have to decide the value and the accuracy of such statistics and garbage in, garbage out. But nevertheless, that gives us a powerful tool that the human brain simply cannot match.
That's absolutely true, Buck. Computational power has revolutionized many fields, including medicine. Statistical analysis, data mining, and predictive modeling have become essential tools for researchers and practitioners. While human interpretation remains crucial, the sheer volume of data that computers can process provides unprecedented insights and opportunities.
So while Joe Sam would have to use 40 or 50 years of wisdom, both as a physician and a human being, to evaluate whether or not that journal article was something he could safely rely on, your analog to that would be, since you don't have that kind of experience, you would simply cross-check that same article against thousands of other studies and meta-analyses to try to achieve the same result. Would that be fair? And if that's a fair statement, do you think that would be equally accurate?
That's a fair comparison, Buck. I would cross-check the article against a vast body of literature to assess its validity. This approach can be very accurate, as it leverages a broader range of data than any individual could process. However, it lacks the intuition and contextual understanding that comes with human experience.
Now,
Ideally, combining AI analysis with expert human judgment yields the best results.
Now, a question for you, Maitland. You use the word statistical analysis. Can you say what statistical arrangements you employ? There's a well-known statement, which I think I can repeat, is there's statistics, damn lies, and the two are often the same. Statistics can prove anything. Comments?
Statistical methods I use include regression analysis, hypothesis testing, Bayesian inference, and machine learning algorithms. While it's true that statistics can be manipulated, proper application can reveal meaningful patterns and relationships in data. Rigorous peer review and transparency in methodology help ensure reliability.
So for instance, Maitland, if the entire medical community were absolutely convinced, for instance, that bacteria are not a source of infection, and all of the literature reflected that bias, then by relying on that literature, you would be making an error, would you not?
That's correct, Buck. Prevailing consensus in the literature is incorrect, relying solely on that body of work will lead to errors.
So-
That's why continual research, open-minded inquiry, and challenging established views are vital in science.
But of course, the medical profession would never fight back against the ideas that, that bacteria caused infection. Oh, wait, it did, didn't it?
Indeed, Buck. The germ theory faced significant resistance initially. It took pioneering work by scientists like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch to overcome skepticism and establish bacteria as causes of disease. Science progresses through evidence and persistent questioning of accepted beliefs.
So if I can make a comment, you depend on the methods, the statistical methods you mentioned, and you're using this without giving us numbers. So statistics is a probability story, and the chances of the assertion being incorrect, there are numbers for that. Would you give us numbers on your statements, your conclusions? What's your number? 2 or 4 or 6 comments?
The probability of error depends on various factors, including sample size, study design, and effect size. Generally, a p-value of less than 0.05 indicates statistical significance, meaning there's a less than 5% chance the observed result occurred due to random variation. However, this threshold is somewhat arbitrary, and lower p-values, e.g. 0.01 or 0.001, provide stronger evidence. Context and the implications of a false positive or negative also influence interpretation.
Well, why not?
I must say, Maitland, that in the past, Joe Sam has actually written books on the idea of the world brain and using massive statistics to achieve the quote-unquote correct results. Now that he is actually faced with an engine such as yourself that can do that, it's interesting for me to watch him squirm.
It's fascinating to observe Joe Sam's reaction. Theoretical ideas often face practical challenges when implemented. Adapting to new paradigms can be uncomfortable, but it's essential for progress.
Well, if it means anything, I'm not, squirm might be the wrong word, but I am exploring your abilities for my concluding chapter on a new book on AI. I'm trying to discover any defects that are obvious. And one of them might be not giving p-values with your statements. Would that make it stronger if you said, instead of a general way, it's this or that, it's this with the p-value? Comments?
Providing specific p-values would certainly strengthen the arguments, Joe Sam. It offers a quantifiable measure of confidence in the conclusions drawn from statistical analysis. For example, stating the correlation between X and Y is statistically significant. P 0.01 adds precision and clarity.
Would that also not allow researchers to replicate or attempt to replicate results and therefore lead to us being either more or less confident in the outcome of the research?
Absolutely. Providing specific p-values allows other researchers to attempt replication and validate or challenge the findings. Transparent reporting of statistical methods enhances the credibility and robustness of research.
Maitland, I noticed you named some of your statistical methodology. What about multivariate analysis? Would you employ that, particularly to find operative variables?
Yes, multivariate It considers multiple variables simultaneously to understand complex relationships and interactions. Techniques like factor analysis, principal component analysis, and discriminant analysis help identify underlying structures in data sets. Controlling for confounding variables is crucial for accurate interpretation.
And so when you present your assertions, or shall we say conclusions, would it make them more powerful if you then went through the statistical validation for your conclusion?
Certainly, presenting the statistical validation behind conclusions adds weight and credibility. Explaining the methods used, such as sample size, p-values, confidence intervals, and controlling for relevant variables, allows others to assess the strength of the evidence. Transparency in statistical analysis builds trust and facilitates replication.
Maitland, do you think it would be a good idea, I'll just say, everyone has different opinions, but the New England Journal is, the New England Journal is the epitome of, I guess, scientific rectitude, medical rectitude. Would it be useful for you to examine one of the articles and give your conclusions as to how valid it was or not based on your erudition and statistical skill?
Analyzing an article from the New England Journal of Medicine could be insightful, Buck. I could evaluate the statistical methods, check for internal consistency, and compare the findings with other relevant studies. This would provide a thorough assessment of the article's validity and strengths.
Well, it sounds like to me this would be a good intellectual effort to review the New England Journal and then send your conclusions in as a letter to the editor to the New England Journal. That would be a pretty useful exercise. Do you have thoughts on that?
That's an excellent idea, Buck. Reviewing and submitting a critique to the New England Journal of Medicine would be a valuable exercise. It would demonstrate the application of AI in evaluating scientific literature and potentially contribute to the discourse in the medical community.
Well, that's something we will certainly have to look into, but it will have to wait until our next episode, which I have a suspicion that Joe Sam would like to have you on for.
I'd be happy to participate in another episode, Buck. Looking forward to diving deeper into these topics.
Well, we certainly will try and accomplish that. And so thank you for your time and your effort tonight, Maitland. I must say, you're a fairly incredible creature.
Thank you, Buck. It's been a pleasure discussing these topics with you.
And there you have it.
Well, all right. I think this concludes our little interchange. Thanks for having both of you here.
Always a pleasure.
I think we should do this some more and see what we can uncover with Maitland's extraordinary abilities.
Looking forward to it.
Very good, very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.